What is up, guys? Welcome to my review for Arrow Season 7, Episode 13, titled Star City Slayer. This episode had a lot of revelations about certain characters, a lot of references as well, and a couple characters actually left the show, like, out of nowhere, and I will go over that in this review. But first, the title of the episode is Star City Slayer, and that means Stanley Dover returned from Episode 7, from the last time he appeared in the whole prison storyline, and he is back for this episode. But in my opinion, I don't think they really handled his return very well, especially at the end. In this episode, I think that the whole storyline started out pretty well with the whole creepy vibe of him like stalking Team Arrow, like Dinah and Diggle, taking pictures of them, and that continued from last episode where Laurel and Dinah, which by the way, Laurel was not included in this episode. It's weird to me that they gave all these notes to Laurel and Dinah specifically, but then Laurel was not included in this episode. This is very weird, like very, very weird in my opinion. But anyway, when Team Arrow sees all these notes, which is revealed later that Stanley left them to warn them to stay away from Oliver, but then they go out and track him down, which I think it's pretty lame. Which another thing that's lame, that Team Arrow right now doesn't wear their costumes. Like, I was excited for Team Arrow to return, but if they're just going to be members of the police, it seems like they're not actually putting on their costumes at all. Like, Curtis did not put on his Mr. Terrific costume, Dinah did not put on her Black Canary costume, Renee did not put on his Wild Dog costume, and Diggle did not put on his Spartan costume when they went out to fight a villain, and I don't see why that would be any different from a normal villain fight. So that is pretty lame, and that's something I complained about in Legends of Tomorrow as well. They just don't put on their costumes enough. This is a superhero show, it's not a cop show. They should definitely put on their costumes. There should be like a whole task force of superheroes on the police force. But anyway, I do think this whole sequence of events where they go after Stanley in his house, it is pretty creepy, it is pretty spooky, and I do think they handled that pretty well. I was kind of scared a little bit for the characters, because obviously we know Dinah's not going to die, Diggle's not going to die, Renee's not going to die, because they're all in the future. Curtis might have died because he doesn't have the tattoo in the future, and the reason I said Diggle is because he has the tattoo in the future, and he doesn't here. But there are other consequences other than dying. Like here we see Dinah gets her throat just completely slit open, which was a pretty insane moment. It was in the trailer, but I didn't actually think it was going to happen that way. I thought it was like maybe edited together to look crazy. I probably should have picked up on this, but it seems like they might be getting rid of Dinah's powers, which is also pretty lame, because I do like Dinah like quite a lot, especially as the Black Canary. We haven't really seen her that much as the Black Canary this season, at least in the present day. So I do think that is pretty lame that they're getting rid of her powers, maybe just so Laurel can become the actual Black Canary, which I don't know what they're doing here. But I do think this exact moment where she got her throat just completely slit open was a pretty insane moment. But then Stanley goes to Oliver's house and paralyzes him, Felicity and William. This is the reunion I've been waiting for. At least it's been 6 episodes since we've last seen these two, and I do think that their relationship was built up very well in the first 7 episodes of this season, and I don't think it really went anywhere with this episode. I don't think that they really handled the conclusion of that whole storyline. If this is the conclusion, which it might not be, but at least the reunion between these two characters, I don't think it was handled very well. It doesn't seem like Oliver really cared at all about Stanley in this. It doesn't seem like it was any different from any normal villain to Oliver, which I guess makes sense a little bit. We saw in episode 7 Oliver didn't really care about him anymore, but at least have like some sort of difference between a normal villain and this villain, like some sort of personal thing like they had with most main villains where they have some personal connection to Oliver. It's different because it is personal, like with Slade, for instance. It was very personal because that was his friend, or Malcolm because that was his friend's father. Here it was his friend for a while, so it should be a little bit different. But to Oliver, at least, it didn't seem like it was different. For Stanley, obviously, it did, because his whole thing is that he wants to team up with Oliver, I guess, to be a superhero duo, which is something that I do think it's very interesting, and I think it's a very unique motivation. It's a very good motivation for a villain. I do think that they're doing villains of the week pretty well, but they should not be doing villains of the week. They really should just be doing a villain of the season, because that's something this show needs this season, and it's something it lacks this season at the moment. But this whole confrontation in this episode, I do think that Stanley's actor did a pretty great job at making Stanley seem like a sociopath and a psychopath in this episode. He told his whole backstory in his monologue-y way, which was pretty cliche, but it was also nice to hear his whole backstory in this episode. I don't like how he was defeated in the end because it just defied all logic by how Oliver was able to move while he was being paralyzed by this drug, which the drug itself doesn't make any sense, but at least it was grounded in the reality of the show. Oliver being able to move in that moment after not being able to move at all didn't really make much sense, but I do think Stanley was pretty great in this whole storyline, and I do think that they really wasted his character if this is the end of his character. If it's not, it still is not a great reunion between Oliver and Stanley. And saying all that, it sucks because I expected that to be like the saving grace of this episode, and just like the Flash's episode last week, the best part of the episode was also not amazing because the Team Arrow Stanley whole storyline, it was good. I would say it was not bad. I wouldn't say it's a bad reunion. I might have said that. I just think it's a mediocre reunion and a good storyline, but not a great storyline, but it still is probably the best part of this episode. There is 2 other storylines to go over, or actually 3, really. One to briefly go over is Curtis and Diggle, which was basically just a storyline to just very nonchalantly kick Curtis out of the show. Probably the most casual character leaving a show ever in the Arrowverse. It was insanely casual. It didn't seem like anybody really cared except for Diggle, which makes sense because Curtis is pretty annoying at times. Like, it seems like he really forces his humor. I'm honestly not going to miss him that much. He kind of like broke the rules of reality, makes things a lot less tense than they could, because when Felicity broke her back, he fixed that. When Diggle just completely lost his ability to control his hand and he had nerve damage, he fixed that. And now in this episode, when Dinah's throat was completely slit open, he cured that. So I don't think that he was a good addition to the show. I do like his costume, and I do like his T-spheres, but he kind of broke the tension of the show, and he was not a great character. So to see him leave, I'm not exactly sad about that, but it was a crazy nonchalant and insanely casual, and I do think the reason Curtis is leaving is because the cast is getting pretty big at this point. I mean, if you look at the episodes, most episodes, basically every single episode, there is always 1 or 2 characters who don't appear in that episode, 1 or 2 main characters, because look at this episode, Laurel didn't appear when she probably should have, being connected to the whole Stanley storyline from last episode. So I do think that Curtis leaving is probably a good idea. But one thing that was not a good idea, and please, who thought of this, was the decision to give William his own storyline and drama with Oliver and Felicity. This is just bad. I mean, the best word to describe this storyline is terrible. It's just really bad. William himself completely took me out of this episode. The actor is just so bad in the role, and I don't think the fact that he's a child actor is really excuse for how bad the actor is. I mean, also Zoe's actress in the present day, they're just so bad, and I have recently rewatched Game of Thrones, where there are a lot of child actors, and most of them are really good, and I don't understand why Arrow can't find good child actors for their roles. I never really noticed how bad William's actor is until last episode, and way more so in this episode. All the scenes where he was in where they're trying to convey drama, it didn't work whatsoever because William's actor didn't sound like or feel like a real person whatsoever. I mean, even Stephen Amell was clearly struggling to act against William's actor. It didn't seem like he did a great job in this episode either. This storyline was terrible. It was a stupid decision to create this storyline at all. I guess it was a way to get William to move to Central City, which he moved to Central City because he wants a normal life. That doesn't really make any sense, but either way, William left the show, at least in the present day, which is good because the actor sucks, but he did already leave in the beginning of this season, and I don't really think they should have brought him back. There was really no reason to do that. It led to a terrible storyline over the course of these last 2 episodes and a terrible departure for William. There was a very nonchalant departure for Curtis and a pretty terrible departure for William in this episode. But speaking of William, That brings me to the flash forwards in this episode, which I gotta say, I have not been very interested in these flash forwards for a very long time, like since early on into them. Like, it was revealed that it's a flash forward, and it's revealed that Roy's still alive, revealed Dinah's still around. Those were very, very exciting moments, but it's been so slow ever since, and it's not really keeping up, or it's not really getting any better at this point. It actually got a lot worse. The flash forwards revealed that Felicity's still alive, which I probably could have predicted. I mean, it's just so predictable at this point. Felicity they said she was dead, which I foolishly believed that was true. Turns out she's not, and for some reason I'm not actually surprised. I feel like this is something that Arrow does. It just disappoints me every single time. Every single time they say Felicity's dead, turns out she's not. It's just so disappointing. I mean, the flash forwards especially, such a disappointing concept in general in this season. I don't think it could really get any worse than this either, unless if Felicity inevitably does appear, which is not something I really want to see. But the flash forwards started out so strong, and they peaked when they said Felicity was dead, and it just went down and down and down and down since then, and it doesn't look like it will ever get better. Felicity is alive, whatever. I mean, it's not really surprising when they said, oh look, Felicity's alive. All I did was roll my eyes. It wasn't like a shocking moment. It wasn't something like it enraged me. I literally just rolled my eyes. It's so damn predictable. It's like the 7th time. I made a whole video about it where a lot of people watched it too. Felicity has died, or is set to be dead, or has been seemingly killed so many times. It's so stupid at this point. It's ridiculous, and from now on, whenever Felicity is dead, I won't believe it. Whenever any character dies, what's the point? It's so stupid. It's ridiculous. But it's also revealed that Black Star is Mia Smoke, the daughter of Felicity and Oliver, which you might expect me to say that I hate that, which I actually don't. I mean, if Oliver and Felicity are together in the present day, which I hate that, but at least, like, if they're gonna have a baby, it makes sense. It doesn't really make any sense if they don't have a baby, so that doesn't really bother me. The part that bothers me is that Oliver and Felicity are together, but if they're going to do that, then them having a daughter, it doesn't really bother me at all. But the fact that her name is Smoke and not Queen, that really can tell something about something that'll happen this season. I might even make a separate video about that. I probably will make a separate video about that. Not exactly a good reveal either. It was pretty predictable as well. There was a good fight scene in this flash forward, so that's something, but in general, pretty disappointing episode from start to finish. In conclusion, this episode is probably the worst and most disappointing episode of this season. I was genuinely excited for the Stanley storyline, and I do think they didn't really handle that all too well. Again, it was good, but I probably should have been great. They kind of wasted that character. Everything else that happened in this episode outside of that was not good. Some things were disappointing. Some things were just didn't expect them to happen, and yet they were still disappointing. And other things I was not even looking forward to, and they were even worse than I expected. There were some good references like Arkham Asylum and Blockbuster, but this episode didn't really have anything good outside of that, so I will give it a pretty low, at least for Arrow, 7 out of 10. But anyway, let me know your thoughts about this episode. Were you disappointed like I was, or did you love it? Let me know in the comments, as well as in the poll in the top right corner of the video. And if you like this video, don't forget to leave a like, share, and subscribe, and thanks for watching.